You can read that, and I hope you guys will read it. And so then he I hate to tell you what I think about that game. What happens if you miss a mistake? Danny laughs. I haven't missed in years, don't worry. What happens when you do miss? It's uncomfortable for a while. See, Danny's pretty cool, actually. He doesn't take anything very seriously. He wasn't too good tonight. It was a little forced. A few months ago it was fantastic. So they're having this very interesting discussion here after the dinner. And Rubens proved himself, you see. So then he talks about how they're going to go on to a college here, a religious college called Hirsch College. I think Rubens' father teaches there, but it's not a Hasid school, it's just a straight Orthodox college. It's a religious Orthodox college. Sort of like, some of these churches down in Orange County or so, like the Maranatha or those sort of places. But this is for Orthodox Jewish people. And I guess they're going to go to there. And so Danny talks to his father when he gets home. You were at Reb Sanders' synagogue all this time? Yes. I sat at the kitchen table and slowly told my father everything that took place at Reb Sanders' synagogue. He listened really quietly. And he grimaced when I started talking about the gematria. He didn't like gematria, my father didn't. He didn't like that kind of stuff. He once referred to it as nonsense numerology. So he didn't like that and the mistakes. He thinks all this is silly. It was an experience, Abba, the way Danny had to answer his father's question. My father, it's the next last page here on this chapter 7. My father shook his head. It's not so terrible, but not for Danny, not for his father, not for people who listen. It's an old tradition, this kind of Talmudic discussion. I've seen it many times between great rabbis, but it doesn't only take place between rabbis. Kant is a famous German philosopher in the 18th century. When Kant became a professor, he had to follow an old tradition of arguing in public on a philosophical subject. One day when you're a professor at the university and read a paper for your colleagues, you will also have to answer questions. So, but the business about the mistakes, I never heard that one before. He's a great man, Reb Sanders. Great men are always difficult to understand. I don't care for his Hasidism, but he's not a fraud. If he weren't a tzaddik, he could not make such a great contribution. So he shows respect for Danny's father. But Danny's father doesn't have any respect for him. So, okay, we're in chapter 8. This stuff you can read yourself. It's about Midnadim, Rabbi Elijah of Vilna, all these difficult things. But let me see if I can find where the Zionism starts to come in. Oh, here's your point, by the way, about my father certainly hadn't told him to read Freud. So you're right, there it is. It's on page 152 of my book. He told him to read psychology, but he hadn't told him to read Freud, apparently. So you have it there. So they get to be really good friends. He goes over to their house all the time. And then even sort of by about 158, which would be towards the end of chapter 8, 3 pages before the end. I suppose that's about 162 in your book or something. Or 163 or 4, 2 pages before the end of that chapter. What page would that be? 68. Oh, you're already up to 168? All right, so is that the last page in that chapter? So about 167 or so. Reb Sanders looked at me and sighed, Reuben, I want you to hear me out. No one lives forever. My father led his people before me and my grandfather before him. For 6 generations we have led our people in this little sect. And Daniel will one day take my place. My son is my most precious possession. You see these people, they love their sons. This great love between them. I have nothing in the world compared to my son. I must know what he's reading, so he's using Reuben to spy on Danny. How did he come to meet your father in the library? He's jealous, you see, of this relationship. And I saw I was sitting on top of an explosion. and that Reb Sanders thought we were conspiring to contaminate his son, that he was studying German and planning to read Freud and so on. And Freud, of course, is the father of psychoanalysis, and he's Jewish originally, but he would be hated by these religious people. And Darwin even. What can I do, he said. I can no longer speak to my own son. The master of the universe gave me a brilliant son, phenomenon, but I can't even speak to him. Oh, so many troubles. I have a brilliant son. I've thanked him a million times, but he had to make him so brilliant. He's too brilliant. And I'm going to lose him. So he's crying here, basically, to Reuben. Then, at the end of that chapter, he speaks more about this silent treatment, etc. And chapter 9. Let's see if we can get the situation here with chapter 10. My father and I followed the war news very carefully, and there were now many New York Times maps. So it's 1945, they're getting across 44, 45. If you've seen Band of Brothers, you'll know things like Le Hay-Dupuy area, Saint-Lô, Cannes. This is the breakout from Normandy. Then the rush to Paris is being described. And that was the week Danny began reading Freud in German already. He also read Hemingway and Fitzgerald and stuff like that. He talks about all these books they're reading. And the Talmudic books, let's see. Chapter 11. It was a cold winter in New York. See, they're following the war all the way here. I'm on page 175. I may make it through this book. It was a bleak news of fighting in the Ardennes. You guys saw that Band of Brothers. That's where the Battle of the Bulge took place, and they're fighting in the winter and the cold, and then he knows that that's happening. That's in chapter 11, the Battle of the Bulge. And also the Russians are moving across Eastern Europe. The Americans have reached the Rhine River, Remagen. We're into the 1945 here. The end of Hitler. Last week of March, Danny caught the flu. The Ruhr, Patton's army. First week in April. And so on. And then, of course, the war's over. And, they're all talking about this. And then he comes to the slaughter that they discovered. Theresienstadt, which was the name of one of the